I forgot the ending of that song, so maybe that wasn't the best choice, but welcome everyone to the Stoa. I see a lot of first timers here. So the Stoa is just, I don't want to explain what the Stoa is actually, it's a mystery. We can leave it at that. And it's a mystery that has many, many rabbit holes. And today's guest is a rabbit hole himself. We have Clinton Callahan with us, the originator of Possibility Management, author of Radiant Joy, Brilliant Love. And he's a memetic engineer, so I'm in love with him already. And that's someone who engages in the transformational application of memes. And he has this, like, someone who's a regular at the Stoa sent me his website, or one of his many websites, and it just got like lost in these rabbit holes, these ecology of websites, and they're all like all these delicious terms, and there's like a lot of resonance with the ideas. And so I invited him on, and we were deciding what the theme of this one was. And there was one website in particular called Escaping the 8 Prisons that felt quite good for onboarding people at the Stoa to Clinton's work. So today's session is Escaping the 8 Prisons, a path of transformational adventure. And Clinton, and I'll take him to Clinton in a moment. He'll discuss what the 8 prisons are and how today's going to work. Clinton will kind of share his thoughts. We'll have an open conversation. And if you have any questions anytime, either put it in the chat or raise your hand. There will be kind of a Q&A portion we can go to near the latter half of the session. But then, if there's any live questions, we can answer them or ask them anytime. So that being said, Clinton, welcome to the Stoa. Oop, you're on, you got to unmute yourself. Yeah. The first prison to escape the mute button.
Yeah, every prison escape has its own technology. So, I mean, really, I was enjoying this song a lot. I never heard that one before, and the ending, like you said, where a person feel like he considers it being suicide to have escaped a prison. I mean, I just want to say that's actually so central to the obstacles that each of us face in our own personal evolution, is that escaping one framework or one set of circumstances feels like death, because we're so familiar with our ordinary life, our regular life. We're so familiar with that. And there's these deep-seated, often unconscious fears that will keep us in the same exact circumstances where we are. They keep us there. And when the fear is unconscious, like we're not even aware that it's fear, then it applies our thoughtware with regards to fear. And so modern culture has given us a standard human intelligence thoughtware, we call it SHIT for short. And we adopt it without even asking questions about it, because our parents did not really ask questions about it, or schooling does not inquire about what thoughtware we use when we go to school. And so we're responding to this invitation to enter the world in a different way. And yet we also have this fear that's deep inside our nervous system. And when fear is in our thoughtware as being bad or negative or unwanted, we try to block ourselves from this fear, then we're cut off from the very resource that will navigate us through that evolutionary experience that would allow us to escape from one of our prisons. So it's taken years of trying to put words to things that we've encountered in the evolutionary path, the human evolutionary path, the possibility of growing up, like the possibility of adulthood. And so the 8 prisons is one way to look at it. And I just want to name the 8 prisons while we're getting started here. And you might check yourself as I'm going through, or it's probably easier to check your friends. The people that you know, the people that you're familiar with. Oh yeah, they're stuck in this prison. That's where they are, that kind of thing. And so I would like to just mention them at the first, because it's easy to start tunneling into some of the things and just forget the map of which prison we're talking about. So this first prison that we're naming, and you have to get it that the world is not really compartmentalized into understandable, what do you say, quadrants or something. We make it that way. But at the same time, if we don't have an inner structure that somehow corresponds to the way the world works, we don't have much leverage in terms of being able to create the kind of results we want to create in the world. And hopefully you guys, each of us, are involved in serious investigation, serious efforts in trying to create new results in the world, because the world needs to be reinvented. The human world seriously needs to be reinvented. And I speak to you as edge workers. Each one of you I care about what you're up to. I care about your concern about what's going on in the world and the efforts that you make to make some expansive changes, immediately, probably starting with yourself, because that's really a way to go. And that's how the 8 prison model has a useful effect. And I also want to mention it is not it's not like a system or a method or a way to judge or grade yourself. For example, in many martial arts systems, they will give you a colored belt depending on your level of attainment of the practice in that tradition. This is not like that. So it's not about beating yourself up for being stuck at the 3rd prison or something like that. It's a way to find the X on the map where you are. Because the point is, we can only work where we are. I mean, to me, it's so often like I look over there on the other side of this room here, and over there's a doorway. I can see that doorway, and I might really want to go through that doorway. But I'm not at that doorway. So I can't grab the handle. I can't take a step outside. I am where I am, and the door's over there. And no matter how clearly I see the door or want to go through the door, I cannot go through the door because I'm not at the door. And so the value of having the X on the map of, okay, this is the 3rd prison, I'm in this prison, and this is where I can make efforts. This is what will produce valuable change results in my life for real, not as a fantasy world. And so this first prison we call it the mother's belly, but it's actually this prison of not yet being born, of not actually choosing to be born. And so many of us these days, especially, like for example, even here in Brazil, the number of cesarean births here in Brazil is around 80%. And it has become a cultural norm that the doctor assigns a date to the birth, and then they do a surgery. And then whatever, when that comes by, the child is yanked out of that environment and shoved into the oxygen breathing world, cold, dry, separated oxygen breathing world, without making the organic choice to do that. And so people these days, a lot of us can have been born and not actually chosen to be born. And so we don't have this commitment. We don't really have an actualized reason to be born. And so we hold back. It's conditional. Our life is really conditional. We can't really commit to something. We're forced into these systems, and we're forced into an environment that operates outside of our will a lot of times. And it's just a tough beginning. And so it's like a withhold. We can't really commit. So I don't know if you know people who you say you want to do something, or you want to be with me, or I want to be with you, or let's create something. And it's always this kind of, I don't know, I'm holding back, sort of not at risk, not on the line, not forwardly committed to the environment. And so it's this prison of of not having chosen to be born keeps us out of alignment with a lot of our inner resources that we really have that are available for us to live in the world. We're cut off from our feelings. We're cut off from our vision of what we want to do, our commitment, our ability to decide yes and no, these kinds of things. And it's just a shaky environment. And I mean, for me, it's just become almost cool to be uncommitted. It's become cool to be shaky or not really present enough to be at risk. It's a safe orientation towards the world, quote unquote safe. And it's just tough. And so, I mean, I would just want to mention each time when I mention a prison that I've been investigating since 1975, and a lot of the people on the screen here have also been investigating for a long time, how to get out of that prison. And so it's almost like you got to learn to be a prison escape artist. And the thing is, the best way to escape a prison is to go through the front door. It's like walk out the front door, because then there's no way you can get sucked back in it. So there isn't really any way you can sneak out of one of these prisons, because everybody in your life, the world itself, relates to you as you are. Even if you have a concept or a fantasy world that you're someplace else, the world maps on where you are. And so you can put on a show, or you can pretend as if, but the way the world will relate to you is where you are, which is a great giant, the world is this giant feedback mechanism. And it's wonderful for that. It's devastating for that, but it's wonderful for that, because you can count on the feedback that you get. The results don't lie. And when you're getting these kind of results, it's wild. It's just like you can count on those results. So I mean, I want to just mention ways to work, like what it takes to get out of that prison, and the kinds of things that we figured out. And some of you may who've been through some of these processes could add something, but a way to get out of this prison of being not born yet is to essentially go back to this previous to being born time. Going back into your mother's belly, back into this original incarnation moment, and hang out there for a while, and investigate what is it that's going on in you to hesitate, the hesitation. What's going on, what's missing for you to step into the world with all 5 of your bodies. We're using this 5-body, not this view of ourselves as having 5 bodies. So we have this physical body. In modern culture, when they're ripping you out, when you're being born, basically modern culture wants your physical body to be born, and they want your intellectual body to be born. But then we also have this emotional body, a heart with all these feelings and emotions and stuff. We also have an energetic body, which is it's a subtle energetic field, allows us to notice things like space and time and property and relationship and who's in my space, or do I own that, is all this spatial stuff from your energetic body. Then you also have emotional, intellectual. You have the intellectual, physical, energetic, emotional, and you have this archetypal body. This 5th body is this archetypal body. So after your energetic body comes an archetypal body, and that is our natural relationship with the archetypal world. And since this is the Stoa, which meets in an archetypal architecture, the structure with the pillars and the triangle on the top, that's this perfect triangle. This is an archetypal structure, and the meeting space that we're in together is an archetypal space where the 5th body, our archetypal body, can actually engage the archetypal nature of the universe together. And then we can have archetypal intimacy as well as physical, intellectual, emotional, and energetic intimacy. So these 5 bodies, we're using those. And so the question is, okay, what's missing for you to make the full transition from being in a completely safe and life support system into a world where you're standing on your own feet, breathe your own air, take care of you have your own space. And the questions that come up, there's a lot of stuff that will come up through that, but every answer that you get, like, for example, I am missing trust. I don't trust, something like that. So that's a big one for people, because we think we need to actually trust to be able to live. And so okay, what's in the way of trust, for example? So there's on and on, there's a bunch of characteristics that you can find and renegotiate your agreement with yourself and the world to get born. And then you come into, as soon as you're born, there's this, you come out of this feminine environment and you come into the second prison. And the second prison is essentially, it's your father's control, the patriarchal, it's not the patriarchal, it's like if, like, for example, to get a little graphic, probably you've encountered men who their mother still has their balls. Okay, it's a very graphic but real consideration, because the mother, wants to take care of you as a kid. And then, so if you're a boy kid, they want to protect you, and a mother has this choice. It's a tough choice about what to do with a boy child, because she's living in this patriarchy, which is one of the prisons, and she has to decide what to do with this boy child. Does she want to make another patriarch? So, or does she want to try to make a good boy? So if you're a patriarch, she basically makes your life into a hell world, and is it aggressions and attack and just kind of rude and evil and hard. Or she tries to make you into a good boy, which means she has your balls kept privately away in her little drawer in her bedroom with her underwear and socks and stuff. And so, and you're like, what are you going to do? To get born, you need to take your balls back from your mother. Well, there's some processes for that, but you need to find your fear and your anger and your sadness and your joy. You need to renegotiate that stuff. So this is, and for the woman, essentially her center is occupied by the father figure, whatever that is. A lot of us are in patchwork families, and so there's these stepfathers and guys who move in and out of your life. And it's like, and of course, this unconscious sort of masculine occupies the feminine's center, so that he can possess the feminine. And it's this tough situation. So we're doing a lot of rage work, a lot of ability to get our voice back, our center back, making boundaries, saying what we want. And these are ways to get born and to get out of this father's control environment. So these are the first two prisons. And as soon as you do that, you're stuck basically in the third prison, which is your family's house, your family's household, the rules of your family. How does it work in your family? And you're using your father's, your family's money. You use your mother's recipes. You eat at their table. You use their stuff. You leave your stuff at their house. If you still have your stuff at your parents' house, you've not made it out of the third prison. You're still in the third prison. And if you're really concerned about going home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or being involved in family holidays, like all this kind of stuff, you're probably you're stuck in the third prison, which is your parents' household. And so there's the way to get out of that prison is to start learning how to generate your own culture, your own your personality culture. What is my way? There's my father's way, my mother's way, our family traditional ways, these family traditions. What is my way? And one of the ways to get out of your parents' house is travel. And we really strongly encourage people to do international travel, to get out of your birth culture, and it will help move you and build up what we call matrix in your being, so that you have the power and clarity to go, gosh, this culture I was born in with my parents, my mother and father, there's a lot of other possibilities than that. And they work. These other possibilities work. And it's such a bizarre thing to move out of and discover that other family traditions actually work. And so this is a huge breakthrough to get out of this prison of the family parents' house. But then you find yourself in this fourth prison, which is school. So I'll just ask by show of hands, how many people did not go to school? I don't see very many hands going up. So that's not enough, in my opinion. So it's possible to not go to school. How do I know this? Well, I had two daughters. They did not go to school their entire life. So they were unschooled, essentially. And my older daughter, she said, when she was 13 or something, she said, Dad, I want to go to school. I go, okay, why? She goes, well, all my horse friends, the people in the horse teams and everything where we were in France, they all go to school. And so I just want to see what it's like. I said, fine, we worked it out. She went to school, and after 3 months, she goes, Dad, I want to get out of school. And I say, okay, why? She goes, well, I look around and everybody else is involved in school, but they don't really know what they're here for. They don't know what they want for their life. And so I already know what I want. If I go to school, I don't have time for my life. And we said, fine. So then she was out of school. And then later on, we did these tests, these GED tests to, check if you've learned enough from high school to qualify from being in high school. And they totally passed these tests. Both of my daughters then went to the École Nationale d'Équitation, which is a university for horse teacher certification in France. It's the highest school for that in France. And they got totally certified. It was totally worked out fine. So I'm just, excuse me, speaking from practical experience. The whole school thing is a facade, essentially. It's a giant babysitting machine for stamping out, toy soldiers, basically. And so if you ever, you can reconsider putting your kids in school. There's plenty of other stuff going on that has nothing to do with schooling, that has these ways for unleashing the child's potential and gearing up for delivering what they came here to deliver. It has nothing to do with school. Yeah, school is a systematic traumatization engine. Somebody just wrote that in the chat. And it's like, okay, so that's a prison. How do you get out of prison? Well, there's so many wounds we get from this school environment. Like just not having your voice, not having your center, not being able to speak out, say what you want. There's so much terror driven deep into our nervous system about being judged and graded and getting the right answer and being in the right, the right way, like knowing. And it shuts down our interconnections to creative sources, because we have this pattern that once the right answer, the one right answer has been found, we stop thinking. It's like driving in your car to a red light, and it's red, and then the whole car stops. And if you notice yourself, you stop too. Your thinking stops. You're just waiting for the green light. And so if the one right answer has been found, it shuts down so many other nonlinear, unreasonable possibilities that are needed right now, that we have direct access to ongoingly. So this whole getting out of school is this huge set of healing processes to get your authority back, to take your authority back, your voice back, your space back, your time back, your life back. And each one of those is a huge step in this getting out of school process. And then you end up in this prison called your country. you're my country. What are you? Oh, I'm a German, I'm American, I'm Spanish. It's one of the first things people want to know is where are you from? And it's such a common question. We can't even hardly experience ourselves without including the self-image of this so-called country that we were born in. So countries are a new concept. They're about the same age as school. I don't know, school was kind of invented in the 1850s. Countries started a little bit before then. And it's just a concept. The world does not have countries. So to imagine yourself as it's a carryover from school, that you must have some external authority figure to bow down to give your authority to pay taxes, to be a soldier for, to abide by the rules of. And if you think about modern culture, so essentially there's a mimetic structure that has invaded, a mimetic virus that has invaded the world in the same way that Starbucks or McDonald's, puts one of their stores on every corner in every village in the world, the franchise model. This is a mimetic virus that exterminates original sources of creativity. But so this whole idea of needing to abide by a rule of law, the rule of law of modern culture, it's a piece of thought where this exterminating life on planet Earth. Because the rule of law of modern culture is killing off species 200 a day. This is the results of the rule of law of modern culture. So anybody actually who follows the rule of law of modern culture is criminally insane. I mean, just think about it. It's exterminating life on Earth. It's criminal insanity. And anybody who enforces the rule of law of modern culture has already forfeited their life. They're fighting for extermination. And so what we're asking is, okay, what else is there? How could there be something else? And but when you escape the worldview of your birth, of your nation, then what you can discover is that you take back levels of responsibility. You take back your authority to build your own country, to format your own rule of law. We call those things nano nations. And so all over the planet now, there's eco villages forming up who are starting to write up their own codex, their own bill of wrongs, their own culture, their own national culture, and then moving into it. So you build it up, your own sovereignty, yes, but it's like it's not just a concept. You actually wake up in the morning in your new country. So I wake up each morning in a country called Possibilica, and it has at least 7 members, and we have a flag, we have a national anthem, we have our constitution, and we have really good conversations and really good brownies. Our country makes incredible brownies. So, and we have a passport. So here's my passport for the country of Possibilica, and everybody, each one has their own. I don't know if you can see it. It's actually a talisman for my archetypal lineage, and everybody in the country of Possibilica we know who they are because they have their passport. I mean, we know who those people are. So then there's another prison then that is even sort of more subtle than that. It has to do with our belief systems, beliefs. And it's a fascinating thing to dive into how kind of a prison a belief is, but it's usually we call it a religion, where they claim authority over your beliefs. And a belief turns out to be a Band-Aid, like a plaster, like a thing that we put over a hole in our worldview where there is no answer. So you have this thing like, where do I go after I'm dead? Or where did I come from? Or what's the point of it all? And we cover over these unanswerable questions with a belief, and then we look around, our worldview, and there's no holes in it because all the holes have been covered over by beliefs, because we haven't been initiated into the power of nothingness, of having access to the void. Direct access to the void is an adult. It's a tool for an adult. And so we have not been initiated into that. So we're still behaving as adolescents with regards to the unknown, the void. And so getting out of the prison of your religion, it has to do with this familiar little acronym BS, which stands for belief system. So if you shorten belief system to acronym, it's BS. And to recognize that essentially every belief system is a construction, a construct that it's some kind of a hierarchy that hands the responsibility to what's true over to somebody who sources the belief system. And so to escape that prison, you take responsibility. We're getting to a level of responsibility that's higher than adult level responsibility. So responsibility has this spectrum that goes all the way from no responsibility to child level responsibility to adult level responsibility, then high level responsibility, then what we call radical responsibility, like absolute responsibility. And every game world, like a nation or a company, whatever, you can find out what their base level of responsibility is if you just ask the question, well, if a child makes a mess, who cleans it up? And the answer is, well, the adults clean it up. And then you look at, for example, any country in modern culture, America or whatever, and ask, okay, what messes is this country making with having no intention at all of ever cleaning them up? And you make a list that's a mile long of the messes that the game world called the country is creating. What a mess. And so this means it's a child level responsibility game world. So modern culture is centered on child level responsibility, which means that even people high up in the hierarchies everywhere in the country they're uninitiated. And not only that, so they're adolescents, but not only that, if you have an organization with a hierarchical structure, you've got a design error that is hijacked by psychopaths, because the one who is best suited to climb the hierarchy and take the next higher level position are the ones who are most capable of doing whatever it takes to take a position of power are the psychopaths. And so we've designed hierarchical systems in every part of the world, including the United Nations, World Health Organization, NGOs. If you're using a hierarchical organizational structure, you've designed it to be taken over by psychopaths. And so since initiations have been eliminated from modern culture many centuries ago, we have basically essentially uninitiated adolescents and psychopaths holding positions of power. And you're in the seventh prison, which is called the patriarchy. So there's some misconceptions about the patriarchy. It's really useful to get it that a matriarchy is not a patriarchy with women on top. That's not what matriarchy is. Matriarchy is basically living on planet Earth as if it's a salad bar. So when you walk on the planet and it's a giant salad bar, you pick and take what you want, and then the goddess, the mother, the earth is holding you. The mother is your environment. And when that collapsed in 6,000 years ago due to climate change, leaving the ice age, and things became drier and hotter in many places, then the food supply ran out. The salad bar was empty. And that's when it became a force of invention for us to invent agriculture. And this then once you have agriculture, you've got food that can be stored. And once you've got food that can be stored, you need to build fences and walls to protect your food. And then you get raiders, people who come and steal your food. And then you get armies, and then you get hierarchy, and then you get modern culture. So this is the remnants, the hand-me-down. What we're living in today is a culture of the raiders who would steal the food supplies that were stored. And if you look at any city, it's exactly the same environment, because a city does not function except for having slaves to provide the food. And in the last, whatever, 50, 100 years, the slaves have essentially been replaced by fossil fuels. So the slaves, the fertilizer and all the fossil fuel stuff, there's, I forget the number. There's like 50 people a year's worth of work in one barrel of oil. I mean, it's a huge amount of potential energy stored up chemically in a barrel of oil. That's what we've built machines and used that for creating also electricity, and as our slaves. Okay, well, the slaves are leaving. The slaves are headed out. So as we burn everything and contaminate the planet, and the peak of everything is sort of coming around, the slaves are leaving, and so the patriarchy depends on slaves. So we're stuck in a patriarchy again unconsciously. We're not really aware of how deeply we're in the prison called patriarchal orientation. And it's a big wake-up call to take a stand that you're going to be in a culture and a country and a game world that's outside the patriarchy, and in not being back in the matriarchy. So what are you going to be in? And so we've had to come up with a word that's based on authentic adulthood initiatory processes, calling forth what a natural evolution of the human being called the adult. and the creative collaboration between the masculine and feminine forces is called archiarchy. So matriarchy, patriarchy, they've run their course in the world. Patriarchy is over. What's emerging now is called archiarchy. It's the archetypal masculine and feminine forces creatively collaborating with each other. And we come up with a symbol for it, which is this infinity sign inside of a circle, whereas the infinity sign is the feminine and the circle is the masculine holding space. The masculine being nothing, the feminine being everything. And it's this incredible whole future out in front of us, centered on non-material value. Being able to create non-material value is such a huge force that we're able to be in. And then this gets you out of patriarchy, that you're able to source and live in an archiarchal culture. Wherever you go, you're free of patriarchy. And so somebody from patriarchy comes up and says, I'm the authority figure because of the patriarchal hierarchy. And you go, well, that's a fascinating worldview. Gosh, in my country, we don't use hierarchical power structures. What do you get out of using a hierarchical power structure? Why do you like that? And they go, what? They don't even understand your question, but you do not have to submit your world to their world, because their world is exterminating life on Earth and yours has creating a new future. So you do not have to submit yourself ever to that world. You can have an interesting conversation with them about the values that they're choosing to support in that world. And then the prison that you're left in is what's called the linear life plan. And the linear life plan is a remnant, it's kind of a side effect of all of the other prisons, the school system, the national social security system, the religious, the whole thing leaves you in this linear life plan where you have this model in your mind that you basically, you get born, you go to school, eventually you get a job, or then you start your own business, or you change jobs, and then you write your book, and then you retire, and then they put you in an old people's home and you die. This is called the linear life plan. Has anybody ever heard of the linear life plan? And then you go, where are you in the linear life plan? And you can pretty much tell people where you are in your linear life plan. I mean, probably some of you did this too, but as soon as I saw the linear life plan, I was around 28, 29 years old. I took a look at that thing and I said, I'm retiring now. And I retired when I was 29 years old. And since then, I've been retired. And so I did not have to wait till I was 65 years old before I retired. And so you don't have to function in your life in the linear life plan. I mean, I did a funny thing, which was after I got to 53 years old and I looked into the future of a human being after 53 years old, I go, that's it for me. I'm staying at 53. So every birthday I've had since then has been my 53rd birthday. And it really makes a difference to live in a world where you just every year you get to be 53 years old again. And it's not so bad. So I encourage that, but it's a way to get out of the eighth prison. So I just wanted to share with you this sort of overview of possibilities. There's so many things we talked about. Max says, I'm still 5 years old. Okay, buddy, you know where you are. So yeah, so I want to go back to Peter and say, Peter, thank you for holding this space so we could just kind of lay this out and maybe open it up for questions, like you said, if you could negotiate.
Yeah. And do you have a hard stop at the top of the hour? Can you go a little bit over just to feel?
I got time.
Cool.
That's another prison, actually. It's part of the, I don't know which one it is, but it's you don't have to be a victim of time. I'm a time maker, so.
So feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I'll call on you. You can ask your questions, Clinton. I'll warm you up with one. So like it was really cool. First of all, I like the framework and the 8 steps, and then the kind of different tactics to get out of them, like, to escape the parents' home, travel. Is there a through line between all 8 of them? Like kind of like maybe like a deep code that like works for each, or like a certain mindset that you need to have for each?
What we've discovered is there's an eye of a needle. If you magnify a needle, you look in the eye of a needle is this kind of really narrow doorway. It's a real narrow doorway. And there's a point usually around 18 years old these days where each of us has to make a choice. And for most of us, that choice is unconscious. And what most humanity chooses to follow the program, to go along with the parents' house, the school, the religious system, the nation, the government, like that, to stay on this path. But it actually goes off the path. It actually curves over and it heads towards the good life. So you become a cog in a wheel of a machine where the goal is to reach the good life and follow the values and like that. And if you do that, you're actually stepping off of this authentic path. And the authentic path is in alignment with the essential nature of the universe. And you can have a whole discussion about what the essential nature of the universe. But if you look around and see what's been going on, what you'll see is evolution. And then you can get a pretty good idea. Well, okay, it could be that the essential purpose driving the universe is the evolution of consciousness. And so this path, we call it the path, moves along through the evolution of consciousness and heads towards this eye of the needle. We have a website called Eye of the Needle. It's got great information on it. But if you face the eye of the needle, you've got a lot of baggage. you're carrying mass, you have old decisions, you've got belief systems, you've got addictions, you've got patterns of behavior, you've got reactivity, you have expectations and assumptions and conclusions. And this is all this huge amount of baggage that will not let you get through the eye of the needle to continue in the adulthood path of evolution. And so there's these processes that we've been mentioning to get out of these 8 prisons. You need to essentially get out of the 8 prisons at some point to get through the eye of the needle into the adult and archetypal worlds, the adult and archetypal domains. And it's our birthright. We're designed for this. And what we just don't have the social structures or the distinctions, the thought maps. So we don't have to go through. Oh yeah, I've got to get rid of this baggage. I need to do that to take this step. And this is the path of transformation. And the path, step after step after step, is the death and resurrection show. It feels like dying each time that you let go of one of your cherished little things. If I look around and one of my cherished things is this Balinese little bag. It's a cloth bag made with batik, and I have a pair of chopsticks in here that I made from an apple tree in Germany. I pulled this off of an apple tree, so I've got my chopsticks in my little bag. Okay, this is okay. The amount of stuff I own can fit in a carry-on bag, and I'm not trying to brag about this. I'm just saying it opens up a different world when your material possessions fit in a carry-on bag. And okay, then all of a sudden the value, the cool stuff in the world is non-material. And so that's what the kind of shift is it takes to go through this eye of the needle into this whole other multidimensional, transformational, evolutionary world is waiting for us, where this centered on non-material value. It's not centered on money or possessions or little pieces of paper that say you own property. What a weird concept that is, that you have a title to a piece of the earth. What a weird concept that is. So to answer your, to look at your question, which is okay, what is that thing? We just call it the path. There's a website called path.mystrikingly.com. So, and it's just this invitation to go, okay, what am I here for? What do I really want? Do I want to abide by modern culture's value system and try to meet the goals of a good person or a successful person or a rich person or a famous person in the values of modern culture? What do I really want? And then all of a sudden stuff starts falling off. Well, that feels like you're losing your sanity, or you're losing stability, or you're losing respect from other people who are following those values. And the thing is, I can still have conversations with anybody. I can talk to anybody about their world. So I'm not cut off. I am not a deviant. I'm not isolated, because I can talk to anybody's game world, and I've got my own game world going on, as do you. And so each of us has built a life for ourselves, and the degree to which you take responsibility for escaping these 8 prisons and inventing a life from yourself, rather than adopting what the environment wants to give you for its own reasons, so they can take your money and your attention and your time and your life. That's their reason. So how do you do it? And this is what that path is about. It's a path of evolution of consciousness. Thanks for the question.
Awesome. Cool. So we have lots of good questions. And Chloe, you had a question. If you can unmute yourself and ask it to Clinton.
Yes, it's a question about how do I become a professional prison escaper? And like, what do I need to keep getting out of prison that maybe have not been discovered, or that are sub-prisons of those 8 prisons? And especially regarding this belief, and how I realize how easily it is to be fooled by my own belief, to believe my own beliefs, to think they're real.
Yeah, I'd like to, I was just watching a conversation in a video between Rob Hopkins and this guy, and Rob Hopkins, one of the founders of Transition Town, and he was saying how there was a song that said that the revolution will not be televised. And he said that that's become old now. And what's replacing it is that the revolution will be well facilitated. He said, and it's the facilitators who are like sharing their discoveries of the ways to be a prison escape artist. And so the thing is that it doesn't really work to try to teach somebody to escape prison if you're still inside the prison. So it involves you getting out first. But there's plenty of people out there to help you. And these turn out to be, we have names for them: edge workers, possibilitators, emotional healing process dojo facilitators. There's these places online where teams of people are getting together to help go through these transformational emotional healing processes that actually cause the inner structure change. Like if you're going to change your inner structure, you will feel something, or you're just fooling yourself. And so they have changed this this evolution of your inner structure comes along with emotions and feelings. And if you don't have the emotion and feelings, you're not doing it. And when you do, you can learn to help each other do these emotional healing processes. The facilitators of emotional healing processes are the escape artists. And so you can actually, it is so amazing. Like people think you have to have money to live, or that you need a job. A lot of people think that they need to have a job. And so this worldview that's constricted around needing to have a job to live, to have the money to pay rent or buy food, things like that. This worldview, of course, is sold to you by the corporations who make a profit over you having a job with them. So to discover your way out of that, you need to find another source of your thoughtware. And so to deliver your value of emotional healing processes, or facilitating the evolutionary processes that escape people from these prisons, is so valuable. It cannot be paid for enough. I mean, think about your own life. If you've ever been in a process where you got an old decision that you made when you were a child, like it's not okay to speak out, or I might be wrong, or it's not okay to contribute or participate, or I should stay invisible. Like all these old decisions run your life, from personal relationship all the way up to professional performance, however you want to classify it. These old decisions are locking you into a way. And if you can go through a process with somebody that takes an hour, hour and a half, and you become somebody who's outside of that, who's expanding from that, like free of those how could you pay for that? You can't, it costs 150 euros, dollars, whatever. It's nothing compared to that. So when you are able to provide those kinds of processes for people, the enough money comes in, you don't even have to think about it anymore. It's this exchange of value. You provide expansion, you provide prison breaks, you provide transformation, you facilitate the evolution of consciousness in a very personal way for people, that you have a new profession. You just need a name for it. You just need a name for your new profession so people can tell you. And so we call them possibilitators, or possibility coaches, or possibility mediators, or possibility psychologists, or mimetic engineer. You can have a profession called mimetic engineer. You do mimetic engineering for people, and they escape their mimetic construct and come into the world as a functional agent of agency, a person of agency. They come into the world, and it's like, okay, game over, new game. The old game's over, new game. And that facilitation process we have is a profession. I'm not sure I answered your question, but you get me excited about this stuff, and no stopping me. Thank you for your question.
Any follow-up share, Anne-Chloe? No?
No, I'm interested in the other questions also, so
Cool.
go ahead.
Katharina, you had a question. Can we? Yeah, we can't hear you. Your audio doesn't look like it's on.
Is it working now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Clinton, the question I have is how do we make sure that new frameworks such as possibility management, they don't turn into mimetic prisons or turn cultish? Because I have to say, I took part in some PM workshops and trainings, and to me there is a cultish flavor to it. And I also think the highly controversial organization Go and Change, I don't know in how far they are directly inspired by PM, but I know there is some overlap. And I think that's a danger we have to look at if we talk about your frameworks.
Yeah, thank you. There's an excellent, I think it's excellent article written by a man in Australia, Michael Callahan, C-A-N-N, called "Is Possibility Management a Cult?" And yeah, and I'm glad you asked, basically. So it's a very neutral and really important set of core questions that you can place on any organization. You start putting these sets of questions on organizations, you'd all of a sudden discover that the United States government is a cult. You discover that the Catholic Church is a cult. And you know, the tax office is a cult. It's just amazing in the advertising agencies, you know. So I'm not familiar really with this community game world called Go and Change. Really, I don't really know what they're doing. I did not know that they were using possibility management. The thing that I find most fascinating when I was diving into this question that you asked about the shadow world, you know, the dark side, getting a hold of the distinctions, tools, processes from possibility management is like, oh my God, you know, am I empowering Darth Vader to be able to make distinctions, and et cetera, you know? And so what I discovered, and I really invite everybody to do this investigation, but it's like, if you can make a distinction that you could not make before, it builds matrix in your body, in your being, that holds more consciousness. And so if you have these distinctions that hold more consciousness, there's this one level in the process of evolution where you start using these distinctions as a weapon. And it's a phase. It's like phase one. These things have phases: phase one, phase two. And so the point where you're going, that was your gremlin, you know, that was low drama, or, you know, these kinds of exclamations, that it's like a teenage phase in getting on the path of evolution. But as soon as you actually get what you're doing, you can't do it anymore. That's the thing, is when you start feeling the pain in your 5 bodies of the results that you're creating, you can't cause destruction, pain, manipulation, torture, abuse. You just can't do it anymore. It is too painful. And so, gosh, it was really, I was happy. It was a healing process for me. I mean, I almost want to cry right now, because it liberates us to cut loose and access the archetypal domains. I mean, this whole world that if you use standard human intelligence thought, where you cut yourself off from these archetypal domains, it's because when you start getting access to them, which means how you hold space, how you navigate space, how you connect with people, when you can start discovering archetypal body intimacies with other human beings, the ecstasy doesn't kind of go down all week long or all month long. It really never goes down. Like the ecstatic nature of the life that we've been invited to create for each other and for ourselves as we go through this eye of the needle and enter the adult and archetypal domains together intimately, is on the, it's like on the other side of the world that you just described, the fear-based, oh my God, I have to watch out for myself because nobody else is watching out for me, really. You know, this whole war on terror is such a war on humanity, such a war on the earth. It's a war on intelligence or justice. I don't know, but we can get sucked into these worldviews that are marketed to us, and it leaves us in this victim-y, isolated, you know, trying to protect ourselves from advertisers, from products, from, you know, in Brazil, for example, you can't even hardly buy bottled water that has not been fluorinated. It has fluorine in the bottled water. Okay, well, the fluorine is a waste byproduct of nuclear, you know, uranium refinement or something like that. It's this byproduct that they just don't know what to do with, like making depleted uranium bullets out of, you know, the byproduct of a nuclear power plant. There's so many tons of depleted uranium around. It's radioactive, but it's also really heavy and hard. And so you shoot it at a tank from an A-10 Warthog plane, and the tank blows up, but also contaminates the earth with nanoparticles of radioactive material for the next 50,000 years. And that's what's gone on in Afghanistan and Bosnia and Kosovo and all these places where they've been using these weapons. The places are people getting cancer, multiple cancers beyond all ordinary levels. And you have to protect yourself from that kind of stuff. So we're in that kind of world where it is required to be conscious, aware, responsible, and take care of yourself. And that applies also to the path of evolution, because there are cults, there are sects. And so you do have to watch out for that. At the same time, it's a joy to discover that on the path of actual evolution of consciousness, you don't have to hesitate to give away what you discover, because it cannot be used for the dark side. And it's just a celebration because the kind of treasure that we've encountered, the possibility management it's the kind of treasure that grows when you give it away. And so that's why we have over 500 websites and are just trying to give this stuff away as fast as possible. And all that stuff is free. You know, the whole thing is free. It costs you your worldview, you know, so you have to pay full price because you lose your worldview, but it doesn't cost any money. So I hope that helped. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in there that I'm really not here to debunk anything or challenge in a manner that is not necessary. But personally, I just see a great danger in the sense that these possibility management courses are very expensive. They become very exclusive, you know, because you have to take certain courses in order to get to the next. And the more you develop, the more you become part of the community and the more conscious you become, so to say. However, I think there is a great danger there that the worldview becomes very limited and becomes abused, and that maybe people get stuck in a certain, like you said, there is a stage in your framework where when consciousness evolves or when one gets more conscious, there is a danger it gets abused for a little while, but then eventually it won't be like that anymore. But how can we ensure that it really won't be like this anymore? And how do, for example, training programs make sure it's not the only ideology, people are abiding their money, their time, and their worldview too?
Yeah, I'm just really happy you have those questions. You know, it takes a certain radar to look out for that kind of stuff. So I hope you never put it down, your radar and your distinction facility, you know, your sensing ability, and question everything. You know, every single thing needs to be validated, and the legitimacy of every move, really, you can detect that. You can detect the value, the legitimate value of it and where it comes from. You know, what's the purpose behind it? We have a purpose sniffer. It's one of the tools on your tool belt to sniff out purposes, and you can find, is it purpose manipulation? Is it control? Is it superiority? Is it subvert? You know, what is it really? What is it about? And so, I mean, you know, the game world of money is a fascinating game world, and it's one of the hugest game worlds where this part of ourselves that likes to avoid responsibility can play itself out, called the gremlin. We call it the gremlin part. And so, you know, the whole orientation of being, what's that word? Anyway, a victim of not having, unprivileged, underprivileged, or something like that. To being underprivileged is a victim orientation towards God or something. And so the money game world is a fantastic place to play out the underprivileged orientation of the victimhood. And I just want you to know, we've done experiments essentially of paying people to come to our trainings. We give them money to come to upgrade their thoughtware. And the people leave in the middle of the training. People don't come, they leave. They give us the money back, say, please take the money back. I can't, I don't want to do this. You know, I don't want to upgrade my thought. I don't want to go on this path of evolution. It's too dynamic. It's too alive for me. I don't get to play out my gremlin, victim-y, scarcity, you know, people abuse me story world. And so, but in any case, if you ever find a way that we could give out all this stuff for free, I mean, that's what the game is about. We have this thing called startover.xyz, open to the world, 24 hours a day, gives away more than we can give away in the training spaces. It's all available there. And, you know, it has not gone viral yet. There are not millions of users making use of this yet. Hopefully there will be. But anyway, thank you for having your radar out, Katrina. That's really, I appreciate that. And please empower other people with those questions and those deep, you know, there's no question that cannot be asked, you know, even how quote unquote dangerous it may seem, or, you know, offend people. You know, if you could offend me, I'll give you 10 euros. You know, really, it's, you know, so go for it. Like, that's what this is about. That's what the Stoa is about. I love the space. This is what the Stoa is for. Ask the hard questions.
You might have to give out those 10 euros now, because we got a wild man coming up next, Kevin DeLan. You had a bunch of questions in the chat if you want to ask one, Kevin.
Oh boy. Oh, well, that's a lot of expectations, but I'll do my best, Peter. My question for you, Mr. Clinton, let me see if I can find it. How does one know whether or not they're in a prison? And to turn that around, do you think you're in any prisons? And if you were to add a 9th prison to your model that you yourself might be in, what would you call
it? I need to assume that I'm in a prison because the prisons that I was in before, I did not see them until I started hunting for the doorway, until I could start to feel the consequences of the limitations of the prison. I'll give you one example. I was married for 25 years one time. And this is the value of being 53 years old, as you can say. Yes, I was married for 25 years and look back on it with some kind of neutrality. In any case, it took me some years after that to discover that marriage was a mimetic construct that I had adopted and moved into in the moment I got married. And only after I discovered the construct did I realize that I had put myself in it, that it has a door, the door has a key, and the key is on the inside. So this just blew me away. My world was just, because I did not realize that I had locked myself into this mimetic construct called monogamous marriage, and stayed in it for 25 years. And so now I have a sensitivity toward that particular prison. And so I don't know what the next prisons are for me. I'm working on a bunch of doors for myself. So your question is, well, what would be the one after that? Is I have some hints about having to do with like not having like there's this thing about individual consciousness. Like, I know that we're psychic, you know, I think you know that too, you know, so some, you know, you look at a person and they look at you at the same time. Okay, how does that happen? You call somebody and they were just dialing you. How does that happen? Okay, so we are psychically connected. So, all right, what is it that causes the illusion of separation? Okay, so this is one of the prisons where I'm in now, and I don't even know how to talk about it, but it's like the you know, that I think that your consciousness is different from my consciousness, and there's some kind of barriers in there, and so I don't know. I know I'm stuck in something like that. So yeah.
Any follow-up shares, Kevin?
Yeah, interesting. Well, you brought up the example of marriage, and one other question I had was like, do you see any value in like returning to old prisons and sort of either to help others break from them, or I mean, bring up the value of like something like marriage? It feels like these, or like nations, like these things evolved, or patriarchy, these things evolved like, and they had some type of purpose. So like, how do you not throw out the baby with the bathwater of these various prisons?
Well, here's the deal. From one context or cultural context, like say modern culture, to archaearchy, which is next culture called archaearchy, there is clearly a gap. You cannot change modern culture into next culture. Modern culture, the patriarchal empire, the capitalist patriarchal empire, is perfectly doing its job. It is doing exactly what it is designed for, you know, to capitalize nature, basically, to etc. And so you cannot, it's not broken, you cannot fix it. So they exist in different continents. So between is a gap. And so to get from one to the other is this process we've been talking about, the evolution of consciousness that happens on, to me, it looks like a bridge. And so if you're going to be a facilitator of the shift to next culture, the shift to next culture, if you're going to facilitate that shift, you need to have one foot in each world. You need to have a place where people can find the bridge, move onto the bridge, learn how to live on the bridge, which is groundless. And then eventually, if you're lucky enough, you know, you move into the other world. So you have, if you're a facilitator of the shift to anything, any kind of evolutionary process or healing process, you have to have a deep connection to where your clients are and what's possible for them. You need, and it's painful to hold both of those things in yourself at the same time. You do not get the luxury of shifting over to next culture and just living there, because there's so much dominant, you know, McDonald's, Starbucks culture around the world, that you have a job security in being a facilitator of the shift to next culture, and you need to endure the pain of having a foot in both worlds. So it isn't a luxury of being able to just forget about the old world. You need to remember it and actually live there to connect with people where they are and provide the doorway where they are. And this is painful, and it's just part of, it's what needs to happen.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I like that. At the Stoa, we call having one foot on each side holding the meta. So
Cool. I love the meta. The meta is this possibility domain. You know, to create the possibility of possibility, you have a conversation about the conversation. And that's the meta thing. Like, what kind of conversation are we having? So this conversation we're having is a discovery journey. It's not like the Clinton guy knows what he's talking about and that's the right answer. That would be school. You know, what I love about this team is the team. It is we're on this journey together and we open up doors for each other, and this is fantastic. Yeah, so thank you.
Awesome. You good for maybe 2 more questions, Clinton?
Go.
Yeah. Rebecca, you had a question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my question is it's more about the hero's journey. So I was wondering, in terms of like our experience of transformation when it comes to like going through these like processes, I'm wondering about like where does the hero's journey like fit or synthesize into like this like escaping the prisons that you're describing?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the first place it would begin would be calling it the heroine's journey. Instead of the hero's journey, it's the heroine's journey. And not to play one side of the dichotomy or polarity as better or more essential or more, you know, having more power, but it's to be a wake-up call. So to be a wake-up to even, like, I don't know if I even said that before, but to call it the heroine's journey, you're already in a different world. And so that's the personal sacrifice needed to sacrifice ordinary, the sacrifice of comfort, the sacrifice of that, you know. And it's like, this is the ongoing, that can become ecstatic. You know, if you change your relationship to fear, for example, so that fear does not own you. Like we have a process called, it's an online space called Fear Club. And it's kind of like Fight Club. We also have a Rage Club, and there's Rage Club spaceholder training and Fear Club spaceholder training. You could get into those and that could be your new profession. But to change your relationship to fear so that it is not suppressed, it is not embarrassing, it is not a weakness, it is not something you would try to hide. It's actually the way. Fear is the way, because fear has so much intelligence as an ally. It's this incredible resource, this powerful insight about what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't work, what's the good timing, is that enough? Am I too close? Am I too far away? Is this too fast or is it too slow? You know, is it like all these gaps that fear can detect is a resource that's designed into you, so you don't need courage anymore. This whole, you know, fantasy world of this, the hero has to have courage, you know, where, you know, courage and fear supplies you with more benefits than courage ever could. So if you just change your relationship to that fear is this amazing resource that allows you to detect your next step on the heroine's journey. It's always right in front of you. It isn't some far distant thing. We have a website called initiations.org, and it has a bunch of initiations proposed that you can go through. But you know, but none of them are far away. Your next initiation is changing the shape of your being so you're able to take more responsibility afterwards. That is what an initiation is. Any process that builds in you the inner structure, the matrix that allows you to take more responsibility is an initiation. And you can detect that. We have sensors for that. Like if you want to get a job done, you look for somebody who can do the job. Well, you're scanning for their matrix. Can they be responsible in the areas that you need them to take responsibility for? And so your next initiatory process is right in front of you. And that isn't you know, it's not so easily diagrammable as what's this diagram of the heroes, you know, the quote unquote hero's journey that they try to make all the Marvel comics movies, you know, the superhero movies about these days. You know, there's an archetypal nature to that, but it's less defined and more terrifying and far more entertaining. Like transformation and evolution is the most entertaining stuff in the world. Your own personal transformation and evolution. If you want to take it a notch further, learn to hold and navigate transformational spaces for others. Because you're always, an evolutionary game world has to evolve. If you're a space holder for evolution and transformation, you got to evolve and transform ongoingly, like 3 times before breakfast. That would be the start of a good day. And so this is what that your question about, checking out the hero's journey, or now we call it the heroine's journey, has to do with this work. Does that help?
Yeah, that sort of answers my question. I think it just gets really complex when we're looking at like the differences between like the actual like structural system of the hero's journey and like you mentioned earlier, just like the archetypal body and the way that interacts with like all these other like variances within like our human experience. But yeah, still inquiring into like how to use the hero's journey, like to kind of access all of these like prison points and like, kind of navigate the world in that way. But yeah, that is helpful.
One at a time. A human being can only really engage one transformation process at a time. You try to do it all at once or something, it's just an excuse for not doing any of them. And so really, I think it's really fortunate for us that consciousness itself and the experience of evolution is far more complex and dynamic than we can package into a 2-dimensional, pictorial with some labels, in a circle. If you got a circle on it, it's good. So, you know what I mean? It's far more complex, and I think we're lucky about that. It's a wake-up call that we can't wrap our minds around the world, can't wrap our minds around the universe or evolution. And so one of the first things you get to give up on your path is your mind. That you have immensely more powerful, faster, more useful resources than in your intellect. And it's a fascinating part of the evolutionary path to encounter that.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. And let's squeeze in one more question. This is from Victor, the man who introduced me to Clinton's work. Victor, if you can close us off.
Hey, thanks, Peter. Hey, Clinton.
Hey.
Yeah, I too appreciate the Stoa for what it is, because it's an amazing space, and like we're in it now, but like people are going to be encountering it like afterwards on YouTube, and I think like on YouTube, it's kind of cool. It's not as engaging as this. It's more consumptive. So for those that are watching, like what could you offer to them as an injunction to not consume here, but to experience as true for themselves?
I would offer a couple of warnings, which is if you actually get 1/10 of anything that was said in this space, you will be going through liquid states. You won't be able to ingest or integrate what's been happening without going through liquid states. So I'd just like to warn you that if you're feeling like shutting the thing off, or you're feeling like you're going a little crazy, or you're feeling really angry, or if you're feeling like you're suppressing fear or grief, you have grief about you've been thinking in old ways for so long, you believed the bullshit for so long, and there's whole universes out in front of you that you've been blocking yourself against. If you're feeling any of that stuff, it's just called a liquid state. It's a website called liquidstate.mystrikingly.com. And you just go there and find out which of your 5 bodies is in the liquid state. Is it your intellectual body in a liquid state? Probably yes. Is it your physical body in a liquid state? Could be, because we are organic beings, and then you might feeling some internal nausea or a headache, or you could have this trembling, this like inner shaking that you're trying to suppress. These are all physical symptoms of a liquid state. You have energetic body liquid state, archetypal body liquid state, emotional liquid state. These are liquid states. So the warning is, if we should have given this at the beginning, so maybe we should chop and paste this at the very beginning of the video as warning. Abandon all hope, all ye who enter here, in terms of avoiding liquid state. So it's liquidstate.mystrikingly.com is the URL for that. And it's, as I said, there's a gateway to over 500 websites that are interlinked with each other. It's called, the whole thing is called startover.xyz. But we built this because even though the evolution of consciousness has a speed limit, and we trust you to go on that speed limit yourself, you will naturally manage this at your speed limit, that we don't know the path. And so the websites are interlinked so that you can go to what you need next. You can go to what the next thing is. So you can trust your own necessity. You can trust your own instinct about what would be useful, valuable for you next. And so just, you can have radical reliance on the evolutionary path because it's powered by bright principles, which are forces of nature, and it's powered by your own archetypal lineage, which is also another force of nature. And it's also powered by these feelings, archetypal structures that you have in your body since you were born, that when you go through turning your feelings back on, your anger, your sadness, your fear, your joy, when you turn those on, these structures show up in your body. They come alive in adulthood, and they've been waiting to get turned on through this stellating process that is straightforward to do in a evolutionary spaces. And so these are some things to look out for as you start engaging, upgrading your thoughtware, which we strongly encourage. Is that we're using really outdated thoughtware. It's been handed down from parents to parents, and then you've got it. And in school, we don't even talk about what thoughtware you're using. We talk about what ideas you think about, what your knowledge base is, the content, but we don't talk about what you're using to think with. And if you think how many times you upgrade, the thoughtware on your phone, how often do you do that? Pretty often. Well, it might be time to upgrade your own thoughtware. And there's ways to do that. Victor, thank you for your question.
Awesome.
Me
Thank
too.
you. Thank you, Victor. So we're at the bottom of the hour, even though that time may or may not exist right now. We shall close here. Clinton, any parting words you'd like to leave us with at the Stoa?
I just want you to know that this is not just me. So, I started back in 1975, and particularly since the 1990s, there's been more and more people. I've been able to make this stuff more and more available. So there's books out in German and English, and we're working in other languages. There's a Conscious Feelings book, the Building Love That Lasts book. There's a book in German called Wutkraft, and so there's books out. You can find them, and I just want to say it's not me. There are other people writing these books. There's other people helping the websites. There's hundreds of people delivering Rage Club, which is like a first step that I would really recommend. If you want to turn yourself on, if you want to find this spark that is in there, and you want to make space in the world for you to show up in, you need Rage Club to begin with, and that'll lead into a bunch of other stuff for you. So really get in a Rage Club, do that work, and that'll be the most amazing thing. We get so many positive feedback letters from people going, I never knew about this. Why didn't people tell me about this before? Why isn't this part of school? Why? And so that would be a recommendation for people to do that. And I just want you to know, this is not just the Clinton Callahan game world. I'm really a tiny player in this. There's plenty of other people who can give talks like this. I mean, several of them are even here in the talk with us right now. Dan Palmer's over there, and Chloe Destremo, Mia is here. So these people can also, Joseph, are you giving talks? I don't know. But anyway, there's wonderful people to get to know, and a lot of them are so dedicated. They're more dedicated to your evolution than you are. And what a place to be in, with a possibility team or a Rage Club, where people they see your potential better than you do, and they hold this space for you to just unfold into. And just, I encourage you to discover the new play space. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Clinton. And you can check out Clinton's work. Here's the article in the chat, 8 Prisons, and his website. And Rage Club, Peer Club, you got some really good coinage there, whoever's coming up with that. So I'll make some closing announcements in a moment, but Clinton, thank you so much for coming to the Stoa today. It was greatly appreciated. And next up at the Stoa on Friday, we got Ken Wilber coming to the Stoa, Making Sense of Everything, the Wisdom of Integral Theory. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you'd like to check out more events, you can go at thestoa.ca. So Clinton, everyone, thank you so much for coming to the Stoa today.
Thank you all. Thank you. Hope to see you around. Check in with us. I just wanted to know you were available, so our email address and everything's all online. Just talk to us.